I still remember the moment the laughter echoed across the street. I had just stepped outside to fix a loose fence board on my old lakefront house, the only original structure left after the developers transformed the entire area into a shiny, overpriced suburban paradise. 3 neighbors stood together, smirking, whispering loud enough for me to hear. "Look at that relic. Why doesn't he just move? How does that place even pass inspection?" Their mockery wasn't new. Everyone in the neighborhood called my place the shack, the eyesore, the property value killer. They had no idea I heard every joke, every insult, every HOA complaint. They also had no idea that I kept every letter, every threat, every fine they tried piling on me. But I stayed quiet, patient, observing, because the thing none of them knew was this: I didn't just buy the neighborhood. I built it, funded it, owned every inch of it through layered trusts and shell corporations designed to keep me invisible. The HOA president, Geraldine, was the loudest critic. She'd slam violation notices onto my door like she was trying to break it down. She'd call emergency meetings about how my house was hurting property values. She once even suggested forcibly condemning my home so the HOA could take control of the land. All the while, she had no idea her entire HOA budget, payroll, insurance, and legal protections existed because I allowed them to. The land under her $1 million house? Mine. The trust that held her mortgage? Mine. The corporate board she reported to? Me. The bylaws she waved in my face? Written by attorneys I hired 15 years ago. And the day she came onto my property with a photographer, planning to document evidence for a forced renovation, was the day everything changed. It wasn't the insults. It wasn't the fines. It wasn't the threats. It was the moment she stepped on my land, pointed at my home, and laughed. That was when I finally decided, it's time for them to learn who really owns this neighborhood. And I started with a single envelope, one that would flip their entire world upside down. Inside it was a document that would remove the HOA board, trigger an emergency audit, and take control of every asset they thought belonged to them. I placed it in Geraldine's mailbox myself. She opened it the next morning, and when she read the first page, her hands started to shake. She never expected the signature at the bottom, mine, as the sole owner of the neighborhood corporation. The morning after I slipped that envelope into Geraldine's mailbox, the entire street felt tense. Not quiet, not calm, tense. Like everyone could sense that something seismic had shifted overnight, but nobody knew what it was yet. The air felt heavier, conversations sounded sharper, and every few minutes, someone would glance toward my house, the old lakefront place everyone loved to hate. I stepped outside with my usual cup of coffee, the chipped mug that had survived longer than half the homes in this neighborhood. And as I stood on my porch, pretending not to notice the whispers, I saw the first sign that Geraldine had opened the envelope. Her blinds were shut. That never happened. Geraldine was the type who wanted the world to see her kingdom at all times, even at 6 in the morning. She lived for appearances. So when those blinds stayed closed, I knew she was spiraling. Before we go any further, smash that like button if you've ever dealt with a nosy neighbor or an HOA nightmare. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. This story only gets crazier from here. From across the street, I spotted the trio I not so affectionately called the Peanut Gallery. Charlie, Denise, and Mark. They were the ones who laughed the loudest whenever my old siding cracked or when a storm knocked my porch lantern crooked. Today, though, they weren't laughing. They huddled like kids who'd just found out the principal was in a bad mood. Mark glanced at my house, his eyebrows pulled together. "Something's different," he muttered. Denise shot him a look. "Don't start with the drama." But they were nervous. All of them. Because Geraldine had built an entire culture of superiority here. And if she was shaken, the whole neighborhood shook with her. I didn't react. Didn't smirk. Didn't wave. Just sipped my coffee and let them wonder. Let them stew. Let them realize the era of mocking my home like it was a community pastime might be coming to an end. Around 9, Geraldine's door slammed open. She stormed out in her signature pink pantsuit, the one she wore any time she thought she had authority to flex. But today, the confidence was missing. Her hair wasn't fully done. Her hands shook slightly, and clutched in her grip was the letter I had delivered. The letter with my signature. Owner and founder, North Shore Development Group. Sole controller of the land, assets, and governing rights of the neighborhood. She marched straight across her perfect lawn, the one she fined me for not replicating, and headed toward my property. Her heels stabbed the ground like she was trying to kill the earth itself. She stopped at the edge of my fence line, gripping the envelope so tightly it looked like she might tear it in half. "We need to talk," she snapped. I took another slow sip of my coffee, because patience is the most powerful weapon against people who live off intimidation. "About what? Don't play dumb," she hissed. This paper. These claims. These signatures. This has to be a mistake." I walked down the steps, each one deliberately slow. The peanut gallery watched from across the street. 3 other neighbors peeked out from their windows. Someone even recorded from a balcony. Good. Let them watch. Let them witness the shift. When I reached the bottom step, I faced her fully. "Which part did you not understand?" I asked calmly. She swallowed, a slight tremor shivering along her jaw. "All of it." I nodded. "Then you're gonna want to sit down for this." Before we continue, drop your state in the comments if you've ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA president. I want to see how common Geraldines really are. She looked at me like she couldn't tell if she should scream or faint. Maybe both. Because deep down, she already sensed the truth. Everything she thought she controlled, she only controlled because I allowed it. Geraldine didn't sit down, of course. People like her don't sit when they're scared. They stand tall, puff up, and pretend they're still in control, even when the ground is shifting right under their feet. But the wobble in her posture told a different story. Behind her, neighbors gathered like there was a live show happening. Charlie pulled out his phone. Denise whispered something that made Mark's face go pale. Word travels fast on this street, and if there was one thing they loved more than mocking my house, it was gossip. Geraldine lifted the envelope again, careful this time, almost delicate, like it was some unstable explosive device. "Explain this," she demanded. "Fine. But first, hit that like button if you've ever watched someone realize they messed with the wrong person. And if you're new here, subscribe, because this story is about to flip everything." I motioned toward the sidewalk. She hesitated, then followed. Her heels clicked with less force now. More caution. More uncertainty. I started with the simplest truth. "You know the Oak Ridge neighborhood?" I asked. She blinked. "Of course I do." "And the Hillside Estates?" She crossed her arms. "Obviously. Ever wonder why both those neighborhoods had no HOA until years after they were built?" Her fingers twitched. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Because I built them." The words hung in the air like a shockwave. Even the wind seemed to pause. 2 people actually gasped. Mark looked like he was trying to do mental math and failing miserably. Geraldine forced out a laugh. A sharp, cracking sound. "That's impossible. You live in this." She gestured at my old lake house. The siding, the mismatched shutters, the porch that leaned 2 degrees south. All the things they love to mock. "Exactly," I said. "And yet, I built both." She faltered. No, that can't be." I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. Blueprints, titles, development contracts, all in my name, all legally binding, all dated years before she ever stepped foot in this place. She grabbed the top sheet like she was searching for a typo that would save her. How do you own this entire development?" She whispered. "Because before any of you moved here, before this HOA existed, this was private land. My land. I sold the lots. I never signed over the governing rights. The HOA only gained power because I didn't bother to challenge it." "You didn't bother?" She sputtered. I shrugged. I was busy. Truth was, back then, I had zero interest in dealing with community drama. I built neighborhoods as investments, not kingdoms. Let the board manage the grass height and mailbox colors. Who cared? Then Geraldine arrived, and she turned this place into a miniature dictatorship. Suddenly, caring became necessary. She flipped through papers desperately. But we voted on rules. We passed amendments. We filed for authority with the county. All invalid unless the landowner signs off. Her knees bent slightly. Not a full collapse, just the first crack in her armor. Charlie muttered, "Dude, did we just bully the landlord?" Denise slapped his arm, but she didn't deny it. Geraldine swallowed hard. What are you planning to do with this information?" I stepped closer. Not threatening, just enough to make her understand the shift. "I'm planning to take back control." She stiffened. "You can't just dissolve an HOA. I smiled. "Watch me." Before she could respond, a car rolled up. A black SUV. The kind you see only when something serious is happening. Pulled to the curb and idled. Out stepped Victor Hammond, county inspector, legal consultant, and someone I'd worked with on multiple development projects. Geraldine's face drained of color. "Why is he here?" "Because," I said calmly, "today we begin the audit." "The what?" "The audit," I repeated, "of every fine, every rule, every violation notice, every enforcement action your HOA issued. If even one is illegal, fraudulent, or improperly approved." I let the silence finish the sentence. Geraldine clutched the envelope like it was her last lifeline. "You can't do this," she breathed. Victor approached with a clipboard. He already did. Neighbors whispered furiously. Phones recorded. The entire street vibrated with the realization that the woman who had terrorized them for years was no longer untouchable. Victor looked at me. "Ready to start?" I nodded. "Let's begin." Victor Hammond wasn't a man who needed to raise his voice. His presence alone did the talking. Tall, calm, professional, the kind of guy who made you double-check your paperwork just by walking into the room. And judging by the way Geraldine flinched when he approached, she knew exactly what his presence meant. He clicked his pen. "Let's start with the basics. Who currently holds primary authority over this HOA?" Geraldine tried to answer, but her voice cracked on the first word. She cleared her throat, then tried again. The board does." Victor tapped the clipboard. "According to the county records, the board has no legal standing, no landowner signature, no approval, no transfer of governing rights." The crowd murmured. Even across the street, I could hear Charlie whispering, "Bro, this is like watching a boss fight." I ignored him. My eyes stayed on Geraldine. Victor flipped another page. "And for the record, the fines issued over the past 3 years total $132,000. Nearly all of them to the same 7 households." Heads turned. 7 families. All the people she never liked. All the ones who pushed back. All the ones who were late paying dues or dared plant roses instead of hydrangeas. Victor continued, "That alone is grounds for a discrimination audit." Geraldine opened her mouth, but only a squeak came out. "Oh, and before I go further, if you're enjoying this takedown, smash that like button right now. And if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, we're just getting warmed up." Victor handed her a stack of documents. "You're required to provide written justification for each violation within 72 hours. She flipped frantically through the paperwork. It was several inches thick. 72 hours. She choked. Victor nodded. "Or your HOA is suspended pending ownership review." Her breathing grew shallow. She knew what that meant. If the HOA was suspended, all enforcement power vanished. All decisions froze. All fines stopped. All rules halted. And control returned to the landowner. To me. She swallowed hard, grasping for something, anything to cling to. "This is ridiculous. None of this should be happening." She snapped. Victor sighed like a teacher tired of explaining the same concept. "Ma'am, everything happening here is happening because you and your board failed to file proper county paperwork for 5 consecutive years. That did it." The neighbors erupted into whispers. Angry ones. Realization spread like wildfire. All the fines, all the harassment, all the threats. All of it might have been illegal. Geraldine backed up, clutching the folder like a shield. "You can't do this to me. I built this community." "No." I stepped forward. "You built a regime. I built the neighborhood." She froze. I walked past her toward Victor. "Let's start with her personal violations." Geraldine's head snapped up. "Via violations?" Victor flipped to a new section on his clipboard. "Yes." Unauthorized entry onto private property. Unlawful inspection. Trespassing for enforcement purposes. Unapproved drone surveillance. The stunned silence from the crowd hit like a sonic boom. Wait, she's been using drones? Someone shouted. Geraldine spun around, panicked. That's not. It was only for. I was ensuring safety. Mark crossed his arms. My kid found one in our backyard. It wasn't safety. Charlie added, Dude, didn't she sneak into the Johnsons' yard while they were on vacation? Geraldine shook her head wildly. No, that was a wellness check. Victor cut in. Wellness checks require police presence, not HOA authority. She looked like she was about to faint. He continued, According to preliminary complaints, you entered at least 9 properties without permission. 9, she gasped. I had reasons. Victor pointed to me. Even if you did, he outranks you. He owns the development. You answer to him. That was the moment. The exact second Geraldine realized the hierarchy had flipped completely upside down. For years she ruled the street like a queen. Now she wasn't even a pawn. She was a liability. She tried one last push. You can't just dismantle the HO, she shouted. I smiled. Oh, I'm not dismantling anything. She blinked, confused. I'm rebuilding it. And you're not part of it. The neighborhood erupted. Some in shock, many in relief. Geraldine staggered back like she'd been hit. Victor noted something on the clipboard. We'll continue this at the community meeting tonight. I nodded. Good. Everyone deserves to hear exactly what's been happening. Geraldine's face drained. You can't expose me. I locked eyes with her. You exposed yourself. She stumbled backward, gripping the envelope like it was cracking open her whole life. And the truth was simple. The woman who laughed at my home was seconds away from losing hers. By the time evening rolled around, the entire neighborhood felt different. The air buzzed with something I hadn't seen here in years. Unity. Not fear. Not tension. Not dread of the next violation letter. Hope. People gathered on the cul-de-sac in folding chairs, camp chairs, even overturned buckets. Someone set up a speaker. Someone else brought lemonade. Kids ran around freely, no longer worried about Geraldine screeching about noise ordinances. Even the sunset looked brighter. But the brightest moment of all? Geraldine wasn't in control. For the first time, at exactly 7 o'clock, Victor stepped into the center of the circle like a conductor preparing an orchestra. All right, folks. Thank you all for coming. Today we're addressing a matter of governance and accountability regarding this community's HOA. His voice carried authority, the kind that silenced everyone instantly. Geraldine, however, marched in late, arms stiff at her sides, her pink blazer glowing under the streetlights like a warning beacon. She tried to sit front and center, but the crowd subtly shifted. No one offered her a seat. No one greeted her. She ended up alone, perched on a folding chair she brought herself, for feet away, but socially miles apart from everyone else. Before we get into this, Victor said, I need you all to know one thing. He turned to me. The landowner is here. Every head turned toward me. A buzz spread through the group like sparks running across a fuse. Some people sighed in relief. Others looked confused. A few whispered, wait. He owns this place? I stepped forward. Thanks for coming, everyone. I know it's been rough dealing with certain leadership. The crowd let out a soft ripple of laughter. But tonight, I want transparency. I pointed to the stack of documents Victor carried. Everything we found today isn't just a mistake. It's a pattern. A long-term pattern. Geraldine's face twitched. Victor opened the folder. We found unauthorized fines, missing funds, falsified inspection records, and multiple counts of trespassing. Gasps erupted. Real, painful gasps. A woman named Claire stood up. She had dark circles under her eyes. Exhaustion from years of dealing with this. She fined me $300 for having a garden gnome. A gnome. And I paid it because she said she had the authority. Another neighbor, Henry, raised a trembling hand. She threatened to tow my truck if I didn't repaint my mailbox. I'm retired. I couldn't afford her threats anymore. Someone else. She told my daughter her chalk drawings were visual pollution. She made her cry. The floodgates opened. Every story hit like a hammer. Every confession added to the weight against Geraldine. She snapped. This is all lies. You're all exaggerating. I did what was necessary to keep this neighborhood looking respectable. Victor turned to her calmly. By abusing your authority? She shot to her feet. I had to. If I didn't control things, we'd look like a slum. The entire circle stiffened. A hush rolled over them. Not of fear, but disgust. I stepped forward. You didn't create order. You created fear. She whipped around toward me. You don't get to talk to me like that. You live in a rotten shack. A few neighbors flinched. I smiled. That rotten shack built this place. Murmurs again. Then silence. I continued. I built the neighborhood. I own the lots. Every home here stands on land I purchased, surveyed, and developed. And I let the HOA take over because I believed a community should govern itself. Victor nodded. But under proper legal authority, which this board does not have. Geraldine's breathing quickened. Her eyes darted around, searching for allies, but no one met her gaze. Not one person stood up for her. Victor held up a final document. Effective immediately, and in accordance with county statute, the existing HOA board is suspended pending a full forensic audit. Geraldine's knees buckled. I will be appointing an interim advisory group, Victor continued, made up of volunteers from this community. A dozen hands shot up instantly. Geraldine shrieked. You can't do this. I am the president. Victor didn't even raise his voice. Not anymore. She punched the air in frustration, pacing like a cornered animal. This is my neighborhood. Mine. No, I said, stepping closer. It never was. I gestured around us. At the families, the children, the tired but hopeful faces. It belongs to them now. The applause that followed wasn't loud, it was powerful. It shook the air. It shook her world. And that night, in that circle of neighbors finally free from fear, one truth settled in. Her reign was ending, but she still had one more terrible mistake left to make. I woke up to the sound of gravel crunching under shoes. Fast, angry footsteps. Before I could even pull the curtains aside, my phone buzzed with a text from Charlie. Bro, come outside. She's losing it. I stepped onto my porch and instantly understood. Geraldine was marching straight toward my house like a pink torpedo of rage, clutching a binder so thick it could have doubled as a cinder block. Her face looked like it had been marinated in fury overnight. Behind her trailed her two remaining board members, the only ones who didn't have the backbone to quit after yesterday's meeting. Victor stood at the end of my driveway, arms crossed, blocking their path like an immovable statue. Ma'am, he said, calm as ever, you have no authority here as of last night. She ignored him entirely. I want him fined, and I want him removed. I leaned against the porch railing. Morning to you too. She jabbed a finger toward me. You did this. You set everyone against me. I shrugged. No, you did that all by yourself. Her voice cracked into a high-pitched screech. You think you're clever? You think you can just walk in and steal my neighborhood? Your neighborhood? She snapped her binder open, revealing pages of scribbles, printed emails, old covenants. All torn, highlighted, stained with what looked suspiciously like tears and coffee. These rules are mine. This community is mine. And I will not let you destroy it with your shack. Half the neighbors had come outside by now. Doors cracked open. Curtains shifted. Phones recorded. Geraldine kept going. I spent years perfecting this place. Years making sure no one dragged down property values with their poor decisions. I kept everything clean, controlled, organized. Controlled was the key word. Everyone heard it. Victor stepped forward. Mrs. Collins, this is not... She shoved him aside. I'm not done. She pointed to my porch again, shaking. Your house is an eyesore, a mockery. You let weeds grow. Your roof is old. Your siding is crooked. You ruined the aesthetic. I almost laughed. You mean the house I built 18 years ago? The one your home sits behind? Her face froze. A crack split through her confidence. I continued. The same house that funded the construction loans, negotiated the zoning approvals, paid the surveying fees, and signed the original land contracts. The neighbors looked at each other. The truth was spreading like wildfire. Geraldine stammered. That's impossible. I stepped off the porch. You really didn't pay attention, did you? You bullied the wrong house. I walked right up to her. The house that looks old, as you call it, is the reason any of these houses exist. Mine was the original builder's residence, the operations hub, the anchor property that gave the bank confidence to release construction funds. Her jaw dropped open. I leaned in slightly. I didn't just buy a house here. I built the neighborhood. The silence that followed was the kind that could crush a person. And it did. Geraldine's eyes went wide with an almost feral panic. She clutched her binder to her chest like it was the last thing keeping her alive. You liar. Victor cleared his throat. This public record. We confirmed everything during yesterday's audit. Her lips trembled. Her hands shook. Then she snapped. She lunged toward my porch, shouting, I'll demolish it myself. I'll have it condemned. Victor intercepted her mid-step like a brick wall. Ma'am, step back. Right now. Never. She shrieked. I built this community. I decide what stands here. No, I said quietly. You built nothing. You controlled everything. Her breathing turned ragged. Her hair shook. She looked around desperately for even one person who would defend her. Not one voice rose. Not one hand lifted. Not one person stood by her. She realized she was alone. Truly alone. And in her final moment of unraveling, she made the worst mistake yet. She screamed loud enough for the whole street to hear, If I'm going down, I'm taking all of you with me. A collective gasp rolled through the neighborhood. Victor placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Collins. That sounded like a threat. She didn't deny it. She glared at every neighbor on the street, her voice trembling with pure rage. You'll regret turning on me. And in that moment I knew she wasn't done. Not even close. If anyone thought Geraldine's meltdown was the peak of chaos, they severely underestimated her capacity for destruction. Because the very next day, she declared war. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. The first sign was the sound. A grinding, clattering, metallic buzzing that echoed across the neighborhood like an angry beehive. When I stepped outside, I saw it. Geraldine marching down the street with a clipboard, a measuring tape, and a brand new body camera strapped to her chest like she was auditioning for a reality show called HOA Enforcers Gone Wild. Behind her rolled a wagon filled with violation tags. Bright red ones. Dozens of them. She was tagging everything. Mailbox 2 inches too tall? Tag. Garden hose not coiled perfectly? Tag. Patio umbrella slightly faded? Tag. A neighbor's dog wagged its tail at her. She tagged the dog. From across the street, Charlie whispered, Bro. She's weaponized Staples. I walked toward her as she slapped a violation notice onto Mrs. Ortega's plant pot with enough force to crack it. Geraldine looked up at me with wild eyes. Trespasser. I blinked. Excuse me? She jabbed her clipboard toward my house. Your dwelling has exceeded the allowable structural age limit for this community. I stared at her. The what? She flipped frantically through her binder, pretending to find the rule. The Structural Aesthetic Compliance Order. Section 29. There is no Section 29, Victor said, walking up behind me. His voice was calm, but his eyes said he was 2 seconds away from calling backup. She pointed at him sharply. You don't work for us anymore. You don't get to speak. Actually, he replied, I work for the landowner now. She twitched. Then she did something completely unhinged. She stepped to the center of the cul-de-sac, raised both arms like a dictator announcing a broadcast, and declared, As of this moment, I am reinstating the HOA under emergency authority. A neighbor shouted, You can't do that. She ignored them. All previous audits are nullified. All suspension orders void. The board is fully reinstated under my leadership. New rules take effect immediately. Victor shook his head. That's not how governance works. You can't reinstate yourself after being removed. Her voice rose into a shrill fury. I can do anything. I am the president. At that exact moment, Mrs. Ortega's cat rubbed against her leg. Geraldine screamed and slapped a violation tag on the cat's collar. The crowd erupted. This is insane. You're out of control. You can't fine animals. She just kept yelling over everyone. New rule. No pets visible from the street. $100 daily fine. The neighbors were seconds from mutiny. Charlie leaned toward me. Dude, my goldfish bowl is visible from the window. Am I next? Probably. Across the street, 2 teenagers recorded her on their phones. Geraldine snarled at them. Delete that footage or you'll be fined for harassment of a governing official. One of them zoomed in dramatically. This is going straight to TikTok. Good. Because she wasn't just embarrassing herself. She was creating documented evidence. I stepped forward. Geraldine, you're done. Stop this. She spun toward me like a tornado in a pink blazer. No. You stop. Pull down your old house or face daily penalties. It violates, she made air quotes with her fingers, my standards. I folded my arms. You have no authority. She took one step closer, then another, until she was inches from my face. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. You think owning the land makes you powerful? I run this place. I control these people. I decide how this neighborhood looks. And if your shack doesn't fit, she smirked. It goes. The crowd gasped. Her 2 remaining board members exchanged a look, both pale as wallpaper. Victor stepped in between us. Mrs. Collins, this is your last warning. Your behavior now qualifies as harassment, intimidation, and attempted misuse of authority. Her body shook with rage. She pointed directly at me. This isn't over. I will bury that house even if I have to take the whole neighborhood down with it. Then she stomped away, tagging cars, mailboxes, and even a bicycle as she passed. Charlie whispered, Dude, she's gone full supervillain. But I just watched her, because something was off. Her desperation wasn't random. It felt coordinated, calculated, like she was stalling or hiding something. And I had a sinking feeling that whatever she was hiding was a lot worse than fines. The chaos of Geraldine's morning rampage left the neighborhood buzzing for hours. Neighbors gossiped across fences, shared videos, and whispered theories about what might happen next. Kids laughed at the memory of her tagging a golden retriever, and even the adults couldn't help but smirk. But I wasn't laughing. I was thinking, planning, watching, because the truth about Geraldine was still incomplete. Her desperation wasn't random. It was purposeful, and whatever she was trying to hide could undo everything if I wasn't careful. Victor and I met in my kitchen, reviewing footage from the morning. The videos were gold. Every tag, every scream, every desperate gesture was captured in high definition. But one clip caught my eye. Geraldine had slipped something into the pocket of her binder as she stormed past Mrs. Ortega's garden. What is that? I asked Victor. He squinted. Could be a USB drive, or a flash memory card. Hard to tell from this distance. I knew I needed to get it. If she had hidden records, emails, contracts, or even a copy of forged documents, she could use it to fight back legally. She wasn't just a bully. She was meticulous, strategic, and vicious when cornered. So I called my friend and tech specialist, Aaron. Within minutes, he had set up a small team with a drone, thermal cameras, and GPS trackers. The goal was simple: retrieve whatever she was hiding before it became a weapon. Meanwhile, Geraldine was not idle. She held a community meeting in her backyard, summoning neighbors to threaten them into obedience. She waved her clipboard, citing made-up amendments, and warned that anyone defying her rules would be fined or face legal action. Some neighbors shook their heads. Others pretended to listen, not realizing that the real control was already slipping through her fingers. I stood quietly at my porch, phone in hand, watching. This was my neighborhood. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. I just needed evidence and timing. Aaron's drone hovered over her backyard, transmitting real-time video. That's when I saw it. The flash drive gleaming under the sunlight, half hidden behind her folder of fines and forms. Perfect. I texted Aaron, retrieve it carefully. No mistakes. The drone moved in slowly, mechanical precision, like a predator circling its prey. Geraldine was pacing back and forth, oblivious to the tiny machine buzzing above her head. One wrong step and she could see it and everything would blow up, literally. Meanwhile, the neighborhood watched the spectacle unfold, half amused, half concerned. The moment was tense, taut, electric. Every second stretched into infinity. Then, just as Aaron's drone nudged the USB free, Geraldine stopped. She tilted her head, squinting at something in the sky. Her eyes widened. She froze. And then, slowly, she spun toward my direction. That was when I knew she had noticed. The very thing she thought was invisible, the one piece of leverage she had left, was in the hands of the people she had tormented for years. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Victor stepped beside me, arms crossed. He raised a single eyebrow. I smiled, because now we weren't just reclaiming the neighborhood. We were reclaiming the truth. And Geraldine had no idea what was coming next. The moment Geraldine realized the flash drive was gone, her entire posture changed. Gone was the swagger, the air of untouchable authority. She stood frozen in her backyard, pink pantsuit stiff and bright against the fading afternoon light. For once, the queen of the neighborhood was unsure, vulnerable, and exposed. I didn't move. I just watched, letting the moment stretch. Neighbors were peeking out their windows, some whispering excitedly, others recording everything on their phones. Every expression mirrored relief and disbelief. They had endured years of fines, threats, and arbitrary rules, all now teetering on the edge of collapse. Victor turned to me quietly. Everything we need is on that drive. Emails, internal documents, and proof of falsified fines. We have the receipts, the signatures, and even the timeline of her harassment campaigns. Perfect. I stepped forward, careful not to alert Geraldine too much. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a reveal. She had to see the evidence herself before the neighborhood did. I opened my laptop on the porch, streaming the files from Aaron's secure cloud connection. Geraldine spotted it immediately. Her eyes narrowed. That laptop, that screen, those folders, they weren't supposed to exist. I began displaying the documents one by one. First, the fines issued to families for reasons so petty it made even seasoned observers cringe. A cracked mailbox, a slightly tilted welcome mat, unapproved flower colors. Each document had her signature, her official stamp, and in some cases, receipts showing she had pocketed fines without recording them properly. The crowd began murmuring. Some gasped. A few whispered angrily to each other. This wasn't just bureaucratic chaos. This was intentional harassment and embezzlement. Geraldine tried to speak. I muted her with a calm hand gesture. Let's go through the next set. Then came the emails. Internal memos where she boasted to board members about keeping everyone in line, and how she loved issuing violations to make them fear me. Her own words, her own handwriting in scanned letters, all on screen. Her breathing grew ragged. Her hands shook. The binder she carried earlier slipped from her grasp and thudded onto the grass. I continued. Then came the property inspection reports she had forged. She had claimed to enter homes legally for safety checks, but Victor's notes confirmed otherwise. She had trespassed at least 9 homes without consent, recording neighbors, inspecting fences, even photographing interiors. The camera footage from multiple households corroborated everything. The crowd erupted with whispers. People shook their heads, looked at each other, and realized what they had tolerated for years. You see, I said, pointing at the screen, this is exactly why the HOA board is suspended. You cannot govern a community through fear, lies, or personal gain. She took a step back, pink blazer sagging slightly with disbelief. I continued. These documents also show your manipulation of HOA elections, misappropriation of funds, and falsification of meeting minutes. Your power was never real. It existed only because no one knew the truth. Her hands flew to her face. She staggered back. No words, just horror and panic. Victor spoke gently but firmly. This is your chance to cooperate. The audit will begin officially tomorrow, and every violation will be examined. You will be held accountable. I glanced at the neighbors. Many of them were recording, taking notes, or whispering support to each other. The fear that once dominated the street was gone. Geraldine's reign had collapsed, and the neighborhood was awake. She tried one last weak argument. You can't do this. I am the president. I shook my head. The only power you had was imaginary. I built this neighborhood, and I am reclaiming it. Her eyes darted around. She realized no one was on her side. Not Victor, not the neighbors, not even her 2 remaining board members, who had quietly backed away. The weight of the truth hit her like a tidal wave. Every lie, every intimidation tactic, every petty rule she enforced, it had been laid bare. And Geraldine knew there was nothing left to fight with. The final documents remained on the screen, evidence of years of abuse. And the neighborhood, for the first time in decades, could finally breathe. But as she looked around, I noticed a flicker in her expression. Not fear, not guilt, but calculation. She wasn't done yet. The following morning, the neighborhood felt different. The air was lighter, almost electric. People were coming outside, talking, sharing stories, and laughing without the shadow of fear looming over them. The kids played freely in the cul-de-sac, unafraid of her shrill voice ordering them indoors. Geraldine, however, did not share the sense of calm. She appeared at the end of the street in her signature pink pantsuit, binder clutched tightly as if it were her last lifeline. But her steps were slower, hesitant, almost cautious. The confidence she wore like armor yesterday was gone. She realized her power was crumbling, her control evaporating. I stepped onto my porch, sipping coffee, observing. This wasn't a confrontation. It was a moment of observation. The neighborhood was awake, aware, and united. For years, they had endured fines, threats, and arbitrary rules. Now, the streets themselves seemed to hum with a quiet defiance. Victor appeared beside me, clipboard in hand. The audit continues, he said. Geraldine's compliance is voluntary, but the evidence already makes her authority void. Across the street, neighbors began to gather spontaneously. Some carried chairs. Others had notebooks or cameras. Everyone wanted to witness the unfolding truth firsthand. They whispered stories of fines, of inspections, of arbitrary rules. Every tale added weight to Geraldine's collapse. I walked down the steps, gesturing for people to come closer. Friends, I said, what you're about to see is not just about one HOA president. It's about reclaiming your power. Geraldine's eyes darted nervously from neighbor to neighbor. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. She tried to speak. Everyone froze, waiting. I am here, I said, to ensure that every household is treated fairly. That every fine, every violation, every inspection meets proper legal standards. Geraldine's reign of fear ends today. The crowd murmured in agreement. Some clapped softly. Others nodded, faces a mixture of relief and anger. She stepped forward, attempting to regain control. You cannot do this. I am the president, she shouted. I shook my head. Your authority is gone. The HOA board you once led is suspended pending a full forensic review. The rules you enforced were not legitimate. The fines you imposed are under investigation. Her face twisted in panic. This is unfair. I built this neighborhood. No, I said calmly. You built nothing. You governed through intimidation. You mistook fear for respect. Victor stepped closer. Any further attempts to assert power without legal authority will result in immediate action. The community is united, and the law is on their side. Neighbors began sharing additional evidence. Photos of unauthorized inspections, audio recordings of threats, even video of her issuing fines arbitrarily. The collective proof was undeniable. She staggered back, pink blazer sagging. Her last shred of confidence shattered. The crowd, once timid, now felt empowered. They whispered to one another, planning, coordinating. For the first time, they weren't alone. I motioned to Victor. Begin compiling statements, he said. Every neighbor willing to testify will be recorded. Geraldine's jaw tightened. She was running out of options, her every tactic exposed, her every ally silent. Then a child ran past, holding a small garden gnome. Geraldine's face twisted. the gnome triggering memories of petty fines and threats she had issued. She clenched her fists, realizing that even small symbols of rebellion could no longer intimidate the community. I addressed the neighbors. You see, this isn't just about fines or inspections. It's about reclaiming control of your own homes, your streets, your lives. You have endured for too long. Today you rise. The crowd erupted in applause and cheering. Geraldine's face paled. She scanned the assembled residents, realizing the full scale of her isolation. Not a single person stepped to defend her. And as the neighborhood united, I knew something crucial. This was not just victory over one tyrant. It was the awakening of an entire community. But Geraldine, even in defeat, was not done plotting. That flicker of calculation returned to her eyes, subtle but unmistakable. She may have lost her power today, but the war was far from over. The calm of the neighborhood lasted barely a day. Geraldine, humiliated but not defeated, was already plotting her next move. She had been stripped of authority, her fines nullified, her inspections suspended, and yet, the fire in her eyes burned brighter than ever. She wasn't going to go quietly. Early the next morning, a series of notices appeared on mailboxes. Bright pink, official-looking, stamped with dates and deadlines. The handwriting was unmistakable. Geraldine had somehow bypassed all the suspensions and forged her own emergency mandates. Every house had one, even mine. Neighbors gathered, furious. "What is this?" Someone shouted. Another added, "She's insane." I walked down the street, Victor at my side, inspecting the notices. These weren't just petty fines anymore. They claimed immediate compliance with absurd rules, new height limits on fences, mandatory repainting of doors, and an order to remove personal decorations deemed non-conforming. Victor sighed. "She's escalating. She's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." I nodded. I needed a plan. One wrong move, one desperate action, and she could drag the community into legal chaos or intimidate neighbors back into fear. Charlie and Denise appeared at my side. "What do we do?" Charlie asked, shaking his head. "She's gone full crazy." "We document everything," I said. "Every notice, every attempt to reassert authority. Every action she takes will be used against her in the audit." By mid-morning, Geraldine appeared in the street, flanked by her two remaining board members. Her pink blazer was impeccable, hair perfectly combed, but her eyes were wild. She waved her clipboard like a sword. "Tension," she yelled. "The HOA is reinstated under emergency order. All residents must comply immediately or face fines and legal action." A neighbor, Mrs. Ortega, stepped forward. "We're not complying. You no longer have authority." Geraldine's face twisted. "You will obey." "No," Victor said firmly. "Under county law, your authority was suspended yesterday. Any attempt to enforce these rules is illegal." She spun to face him, pointing a finger like a dagger. "You cannot stop me. I am the president." I stepped forward, calm and measured. "Geraldine, the only reason anyone listened to you before was fear. That fear is gone. The evidence is out. Your authority is null. The neighborhood is united, and the law backs us." Her lips quivered, but she didn't back down. "You'll regret this," he said. She smirked, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "If I'm going down, I'm taking all of you with me." The neighbors flinched. Charlie muttered under his breath, "Dude, she's actually serious this time." I raised my hand to quiet them. This is exactly why we have Victor, legal documentation, and recorded evidence. She cannot threaten or intimidate anyone without consequences. Every action she takes now will be documented. Geraldine took a deep breath and then, with an almost theatrical flourish, tore the pink notices in half. She threw the pieces onto the street, stomping on them. It was dramatic. It was futile. And it was the very definition of desperation. Victor nodded at me. "She's pushing the limits. If she escalates further, we involve law enforcement and the courts." The neighborhood murmured, realizing the situation was more serious than they thought. But instead of fear, there was solidarity. People looked at each other and nodded. They were ready to stand together. Geraldine's next move would determine everything. Her desperation, her anger, her calculated maneuvers were all visible now. And I knew one thing. She had no idea that the next steps we were taking would expose her completely. She may have thought she was on the offensive, but in reality, she was walking straight into a trap. And when that trap closed, there would be no escape. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable. Geraldine's desperate attempts to reclaim power had left her exposed, but I knew she still had one trick up her sleeve. Every threat she made, every illegal notice she issued was a step toward her undoing if we played it right. Victor and I convened at my porch, reviewing the latest recordings. The drone footage, neighbor-submitted videos, and confiscated documents all painted a clear picture. She had repeatedly violated county laws, trespassed, falsified fines, and threatened residents with non-existent authority. Every single action was now legally indefensible. It was time. We called an emergency community meeting, sending out notices that we were going to present all evidence publicly. By mid-afternoon, neighbors had gathered in the cul-de-sac again, chairs, cameras, and smartphones ready. They were buzzing with anticipation, some nervous, some exhilarated. The fear that had haunted them for years was replaced by excitement. Geraldine arrived, pink pantsuit impeccable but eyes darting nervously. She held her binder tightly, as if it could shield her from the storm about to hit. She tried to command attention. "This is a private gathering," she shouted. "I am the HOA president." Victor stepped forward. "Not anymore, Mrs. Collins. The HOA board has been suspended pending a full forensic audit. All fines and inspections are under review." I opened my laptop, connecting it to the portable projector. The crowd gasped as images, documents, and video clips appeared on the screen. Every violation, every falsified notice, every act of intimidation she had executed over the years was now public. Names, dates, and actions were visible for everyone to see. Her face drained of color. "You can't do this," she screamed. Victor continued calmly. "The evidence is clear. County law supports the suspension. Any further attempts to enforce authority will be prosecuted." One by one, neighbors came forward to recount their experiences. The unfair fines, the illegal inspections, the constant harassment. Each story reinforced the case against her. The weight of years of abuse was laid bare. Geraldine's voice rose, panicked. "You'll all regret this. I built this community." "No," I said firmly. "You controlled it through fear, not construction. The neighborhood belongs to the people, not to you." Her last two allies, the board members, shrank back silently. Even they couldn't defend her now. The isolation was complete. Victor held up a folder of official audit results. "Mrs. Collins, this folder contains verified evidence of embezzlement, falsified documents, and repeated unlawful conduct. These are legal violations, and you will be held accountable." She faltered, unable to speak. Her pink blazer seemed to sag under the weight of public scrutiny. I addressed the neighborhood. "Today we reclaim your community. This isn't just about fines or inspections. It's about justice. Every family here has endured too much. Your voices matter." The crowd erupted in cheers. Relief, joy, and vindication swept through the streets. Geraldine's eyes darted around, realizing the full scale of her defeat. She had no allies, no power, no authority left. Victor closed the laptop and looked at her. "The legal process will follow. There is nothing left for you to do but cooperate." Her face twisted in a mixture of rage and disbelief. She finally understood the magnitude of her losses. Her control was gone. Her reign over the neighborhood had ended. The community erupted again, clapping, cheering, and embracing one another. Children ran freely, neighbors laughed and celebrated. Fear was gone. The streets were alive, vibrant, and free. And as Geraldine slumped onto a folding chair, defeated and humiliated, I realized something profound. This was more than a victory over one tyrant. It was a restoration of trust, order, and justice. The HOA president who laughed at my old house, who tried to bully, intimidate, and control an entire community, was finished. And the neighborhood finally was whole again. The sun rose over the cul-de-sac like a spotlight on a stage. For the first time in years, the streets were calm, bright, and alive. Children played freely, neighbors shared stories across fences, and the tension that had defined the neighborhood for decades was gone. Geraldine, once the tyrant in pink, sat quietly on her porch, defeated and powerless. The HOA audit had concluded, and the results were clear. Every violation she had ever enforced illegally was nullified. Every fine she had pocketed without proper records was recovered. Every intimidation tactic, documented and verified, had been submitted to the county authorities. Justice wasn't just served, it had been meticulously calculated and delivered. Victor and I walked down the street, greeting neighbors who were laughing, joking, and celebrating. Felt surreal. The same streets that had been haunted by fear were now buzzing with life. Every house, every yard, every corner was a symbol of resilience. I stopped at Mrs. Ortega's garden, where a small gnome, previously targeted by Geraldine, now stood proudly among blooming flowers. She smiled at me. "Thank you for giving us our neighborhood back." I nodded. It wasn't just me. It was all of us. Every neighbor who had endured, who had recorded violations, who had spoken up despite fear, had contributed. This was their victory as much as mine. From across the street, Geraldine watched silently, her hands folded over the pink binder she had clutched for years. There was no anger in her gaze anymore, just the hollow look of someone who had lost everything she thought she controlled. She had built her reign on intimidation, but it was fragile. Her empire had crumbled. Victor approached her cautiously. "The audit shows repeated unlawful conduct. Legal proceedings will follow, and restitution will be enforced. Cooperation now is in your best interest." She said nothing. Her eyes flicked around the neighborhood, absorbing the smiles, the laughter, the freedom. For the first time, she realized that the people she had tried to dominate no longer feared her. The community had taken back their streets. The HOA, once a tool of tyranny, was now dissolved, replaced by an interim council made up of volunteers from the neighborhood. Fair, transparent, accountable. People had a voice again, and they were ready to use it. I stepped back onto my porch, surveying the restored neighborhood. The streets were alive. The mailboxes were intact. Gardens flourished. Children ran and played. Dogs barked and wagged their tails. A sense of peace settled over the entire area. A peace hard-earned but fully deserved. The neighbors had reclaimed their freedom, their dignity, and their community. Geraldine's attempts at sabotage, threats, and intimidation had been completely neutralized. Her pink pantsuit, once a symbol of fear and control, now seemed almost comical against the backdrop of a liberated street. I addressed the crowd one final time. "You did it. Every single one of you who stood up, who recorded, who refused to comply with fear, has helped restore this neighborhood. This is your victory." Applause erupted. Children waved. Phones flashed, recording the moment for posterity. It was more than a celebration, it was catharsis. Years of fear and intimidation had been replaced with empowerment and justice. Geraldine quietly gathered her papers and left, the final image of a fallen tyrant fading down the street. She was gone, and the neighborhood was finally free. And as the sun set behind the trees, the cul-de-sac shimmered in warm light. It wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It was a testament to resilience, unity, and justice. The community was restored, the tyrant defeated, and the streets, once filled with fear, were now filled with laughter, hope, and a sense of belonging. The neighborhood would never forget what had been lost, what had been reclaimed, and the power of standing together. The story had ended, but the freedom they had won would last forever. Thank you for sticking with me through this wild ride. Remember, standing up to bullies, whether in your neighborhood, online, or in life, is never easy, but it's always worth it. Share this story with anyone who's ever faced unfair treatment, and let them know that courage, strategy, and persistence can turn the tables. Smash that like button and subscribe the channel if you enjoyed this story. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story of justice served, neighborhood style. Your support helps keep these stories coming.